Good morning, everyone. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Me, I hope you're well. I'm going to go over to the chat with some bad news, I'm afraid. Andy Dovell. Morning, guys. I'm sad to say my father-in-law passed away this morning at 4 o'clock. He battled cancer well, but he's out of pain and at peace now. Thoughts are with you, Andrew, and obviously with your other half as well. I know you mentioned this has been coming for a while, but having been down the road myself, I know it is not the best of times. So if you're not here for a day or two, if you're not here for a week or two, fully understand. You get your priorities right, mate, and I'll speak to you very soon. I didn't know that was going to happen, which is why I'm still wearing my amused hoodie. Here's why I'm wearing the amused hoodie. We started yesterday with bad news about the fact that Squib Group had entered a CVA. Well, we have some more bad news today, although, frankly, given what we've just heard, and by comparison, to Squib Group, not bad at all. Cancel culture, it appears, has arrived right here in our midst in the demolition business. And who is it that we're apparently trying to cancel, I hear you ask?
Nice.
Yeah. Who knew, eh? Let me have a look. I've got a slide for this. I'll go with that one. There you are. So yesterday, I reported on the fact that Squib Group had entered into a CVA. And I reported on it not once, but twice. There's a reason for that. The news broke quite early yesterday, so I pulled together a short news piece in readiness for this show and to post on demolitionnews.com. Then once this show was over, I then had time to dig a little deeper into the subject matter, produce a second article that charted the history of the Squib Group right back to 1948 up to the present day and all the machinations that have gone on. And in both instances, I posted the articles on Demolition News, and then in both instances, as I always do, I then reposted them on Facebook, Twitter, and on LinkedIn. Lots of people saw those social media posts. Many left messages of support for the Squib team, which is fantastic to see. Others spoke of the challenges facing the modern demolition contractor. And then, late last night, I got this. Comes from Mark Coleman of Coleman & Company, and it reads, just in case you're on a mobile and can't read it, personally, I think you are the most frustrating person in our industry. I would like our demolition community to stand together against demolitionnews.com and Mark Anthony. For me, you are not part of our community and have no respect among us. Move on and get out. Right? Obviously, everyone is entitled to their opinion, and frankly, he's not the first person to attempt to get rid of me entirely. But it gets a bit weirder than that. First of all, when I look back, it turned out that the guy that posted this comment had previously liked the article that I'd written, which is kind of weird. He then claimed that I'd removed his comment from a LinkedIn group over which I have no editorial control at all. I couldn't remove his comment even if I wanted to. When he reposted his comment elsewhere, I let him know that I had no intention of removing it. As I said, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and if he wants to put that kind of thing out in the world, then that's absolutely fine by me. What I find strangest of all, however, is the fact that there is actually a solution to all of this. All the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, all of these platforms have a block or an unfollow function. Just use that. If what I write or what I say is so at odds with you, just don't look at it or listen. Anyway, I checked this morning, and rather than his post resulting in a mass exodus from my database, our subscriber numbers actually increased yesterday by quite a significant number. So while I'm going to get rid of that for now. So while I await the inevitable backlash, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. There are many good reasons why I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, not least because it pays the bills, but because we have people like this in our midst. Obviously, we've had the news from Andy Dovell about his father-in-law this morning. Gary Muirhead, sorry to hear for your loss, Andy. Andy Dovell says, "Sorry to put a downer on today, guys. You really haven't. You trust me, you haven't." Mick Norton says, "Sorry to hear the sad news regarding your father-in-law. Rest in peace." Quite right too. I thought there was another one, maybe and there is Mick Saunders saying, "Regards to you and yours at your loss." There you are. See, those are the sort of people that we attract here. And just on the same sort of subject, Mick Norton says, and just to let you know, Mick, I am seeing your comments from Facebook. Not entirely sure if anything's coming through from LinkedIn, but Mark Coleman is on another planet, and I find his remarks distasteful. I just found them quite funny, to be honest. Ken Hatch is here as well, as is Mark Whiting. Good morning to you all. Apparently, we've got another one there. There you are. Thanks, guys. Andy, if you need a chat, listen. All I do is type on a keyboard. I'm not a mental health professional or a bereavement counsellor, but if you do want to fancy a chat, you know where to find me. So let me get on with the show, shall we? Yes, it is Friday, the 27th of October. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, we're revisiting the Kinshofer TR045. There's a giant leap for productivity, which results in a very long walk for a dragline. Volvo is on track in South Africa. The unspoken benefits of the cat rental store, and an Italian gets the munchies in Canada. Plus, as you've already heard, cancel culture is now alive and kicking here in the demolition business. Before we get to all of that, let's peer back through the mists of time to see what was happening on this very day in history. On this day in 1904, the first section of the New York subway opened between Lower Manhattan and Harlem, and the fare for that journey was 1 nickel. It's a bit more than that now. In 1913, US President Woodrow Wilson stated that the US would never attack another country. The country has subsequently spent the best part of a century doing precisely that. In 1955, the movie Rebel Without a Cause came out in cinemas and launched the career of one James Dean. In 1998, Helmut Kohl resigned as German Chancellor following a landslide of defeats in elections. And on this day in 2022, Elon Musk took ownership of Twitter and immediately turned it into an even bigger hellscape of vitriol, fake news, and hate speech. Thanks, Elon. Now, before we get into the real meat of the show, let me remind you of our question of the day. Yeah, our question of the day comes once again from Mr. Gary Muirhead, who apparently has if he hasn't got a quiz book, he should write one because he's got lots and lots of very good questions up his sleeve. The question is quite simply, what would be your chosen superpower? Now, obviously, being a journalist, invisibility would be bloody handy. That would be really handy. But I'm going to opt for the ability to fly. I could pop around the world at the moment's notice, visit multiple sites any day of the week, and best of all, wouldn't need a drone any longer. But what about you? Let us have your thoughts in the chat, and we will come back to that right at the very end of the show. Now, let's start the show properly, shall we? I will make a start in just a moment. Mick has just said, sorry, I've been walking the hound, miss what Mark Coleman said. There you go. He said, personally, I think you're the most frustrating person in our industry. I'll take that. I would like our demolition community to stand together against Demolition News and Mark Anthony. For me, you're not part of our community and have no respect among us. Move on and get out. The weirdest thing about that, and I'm only realizing this now that I'm reading it back, I'm not supposed to be part of the demolition community. I'm a journalist. Let me put me on full screen. Demolition happens here, and I'm over here, and I report on it. And I think that's part of the problem. I think the demolition industry has had a long, long period where, I mean, effectively, the NFDC had what for a long time was the only UK demolition magazine. And obviously, it always covered its own members, and it always covered its own members positively. That's fine. Listen, it's their magazine. I was editor of it for a while. It's their magazine, and they can do with it what they will. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. But that's not actual journalism. This kind of is. And talk about raining on your parade. I said that I'd like the ability to fly. My wife says I'd swat you. Well, cheers for that. How about this for a tiny one? I am going to get to the question of the day at the very end, but Andy Dalvell, who obviously has lost his father-in-law overnight. Question of the day is, what would be your superpower? Definitely time travel. Go back to people you've lost and go to any point in time. Good call, Andy. Right, okay. So a few weeks ago, we brought you an exclusive film of the new Kinshofer TR045 tilt rotator as it made its UK launch. We then brought you a Kinshofer tilt rotator customer talking about much the same sort of thing, but we've now combined the two with some fresh footage and various other bits and pieces to bring you both the manufacturer and the customer's perspective on this new model. So bear with me because I need to get this off the computer. Let me get rid of that. I have to talk to myself. I know you can't see what I'm doing, but there are things going on. May have to come back to that because that is not working. I'll come back to it, or we may have to follow it over to next week. Let me roll this while I try and fix the problem.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Next up, we've got a video that's actually on my computer or on this system, so this should hopefully play properly. We're going to hear from a US Caterpillar customer who is clearly a vocal advocate for the benefits of the cat rental store.
I'm the civil fleet manager for our heavy equipment side. We got roughly 25 machines to take care of. We're in Springfield, Illinois. This is a new firehouse they're building. They're getting 3 new firehouses. We started with our dirt work roughly a month ago. We had to build up the site a little bit. We brought in rock, leveled it out, and now you can see they're halfway through the footings. Should be done with them by the end of the week. And this crew will be heading to the next firehouse after this. I love the people I work with. Got some really good operators out there. Guys have been doing it a lot longer than I have. They're fun to watch. 289, I've been on probably 10 different machine 289s. The D3, that thing, you get into a pile, it's not going to slow you down. The suspension on it, as far as the ride, smoother than any other skid steer you've been in, or I've been in. Dumping into a tandem, it basically levels the load for you when you're bringing it up to dump it. We have a road grader attachment that goes on the front of it, and it can be hooked to laser, GPS, or total station. And you have the capability to do slope grade, flat grade, extremely accurate. You can grade rock, grade dirt, you can cut dirt, cut rock. It's the most versatile machine in our fleet. And you could do this whole job site if you had to with that machine. They're going to get you the piece of equipment. It's going to be quality. You're going to get the best that they got, and it's going to get the job done. You're not going to be calling halfway through saying this junk is broke down. And they're going to tell you how to run that equipment too if you rent it. They don't just rent it to you. I have a great relationship with our rental rep. Call him anytime, and he will find the equipment for you. 2 weeks ago, we needed a mill for a 289 to mill some blacktop. I think we called mid-morning, 9 or 10 o'clock. We had it by 11. He's on the spot when it comes to getting us equipment. If you got something you need explained, he'll either explain it to you on the phone or he will come out and show you how to use it. And it's very beneficial. There's an app that tracks all our machines. I can see every machine that's running. It's a Vision Link. And a lady at the Altorfer office, she will call me when one of our machines is getting ready to come up for service. We'll schedule it. Service guy will come out and take care of it. And it's simple as that. I would say, if you're wanting to rent something, go through CAT.
Got to be honest, I was already sold on the notion of the cat rental store for one-off drop by customers. But if you're already running a cat equipment fleet and you can call on more equipment and attachments like that guy, as and when you need it, makes perfect sense to me. Bad news on the Kinshofer video. It's not playing. I'll have to post it next week. So look out for that on Monday, assuming that there isn't a mass exodus between now and then. While that's going on, this. So, imagine that you're working in a mine that is slowly coming to the end of its viable working life. Good news! There's another mine close by that needs the very equipment that you have. Hire in a few local low loaders, get your equipment from one site to another. Simple, right? Well, it's less simple if one of those machines actually has to walk itself there.
Reserves are depleted at Khwezela Gromdraai's mine. The need to extend the life of mine by 7 years, providing employment for 1,200 affected employees and contractors. The solution: to relocate a 3,600-ton monster, effectively known as Pitbull, on a 19.8-kilometer obstacle course until it arrives at its new home, the Khwezela Navigation Pit. The challenges: 4 national power transmission lines, 3 national power distribution lines, 7 regional medium voltage power lines, a railway line, a national highway, 3 wetlands, 3 pipelines, 1 coal mine, 3 local community wards, and 4 provincial roads crossing 12 farms.
This walk is, as we like to call it, an obstacle course. There are many challenges.
Eskom, the national provider of electricity, a parastatal under pressure from many of its critics. In the face of criticism, the Khwezela project team collaborated closely with Eskom to quickly find technical solutions.
Our biggest challenge here is time.
This teamwork led Pitbull across the first major hurdle a full 24 hours ahead of schedule against all odds. The remaining powerline crossings were a similar success story. Challenges arose and they were swiftly overcome. N4 National Highway, the busiest road in Mpumalanga, there's no other way around it. This geographical barrier had to be crossed. Overcoming this obstacle lay in the hands of the project team working closely with Craic.
To get around crossing the N4, we had to build a complete new bypass so we can divert traffic for the dragline to cross.
We have now officially crossed the N4.
A 72-hour window period to cross a Transnet railway line is granted. The pressure is on.
That was the one thing that we could not move. It was like the fixed. Everything had to align to that milestone. And the guys did a fantastic job. They finished it early, they finished it quicker than planned, and it was done exceptionally well.
The objective for the team was in constructing the crossing, walking Pitbull across, and restoring the railway line to its original state.
We're looking forward to experiencing the movement of the machine over our railway line.
Pitbull crossed in 53 hours, and recommissioned the line within the agreed time frame.
It's been challenging but extremely interesting to be a part of this.
Local communities are challenged with high unemployment and poverty levels. Regular protest action is common and has often brought work to a standstill.
It's very important to involve the people that are affected by the mining activities in the community. If they know what's happening, then they are happily involved and they support whatever initiative that the company is doing.
A key part of our success on this project has been how we've managed to partner with our local community. We engaged them and aligned our approach with their priorities.
Reaching out to the community saw the employment of 100 previously unemployed individuals, formal skills development taking place, and business opportunities being made available to the small businesses in the area.
It's going to go into a new pit. It's jobs for another 8 years or so. It supports the community, it supports the contractors and families.
Making sure that we blend people with experience and young people with potential.
One of the results was that 2 schools received upgrades on their facilities.
We believe that we're making a lasting positive impact on our local community.
The relocation of Pitbull without any injuries or incidents is an outstanding achievement, considering the fact that regular high-risk activities took place. The results were achieved regardless of the fact that there were 100 employees who had never previously worked on a construction or mining site.
This is one special project because of the way that it has been executed.
Critical issues were focused on.
I think that's the greatest achievement, to relocate this machine without any safety incident.
Everything along the route actually went smoother than anticipated.
A no-wed, no-work policy was adhered to. The implementation of snakes and hazards process was crucial to create a common language between employees and the project team.
By relocating Dragline 01 or Pitbull, we are securing employment opportunities for roughly 1,000 employees and contractors.
I had the best team that one can get.
The numbers speak for themselves. The project team's excellent performance resulted in cost savings of over 35 million rand.
It's hard to believe that we managed to relocate this dragline was below the contracted amount.
In reflecting on this incredible journey, the project team demonstrated their absolute commitment to the Anglo values.
All the emotions, the sleepless nights that we had, and then at least it pays off.
It's an amazing feeling. I mean, the dragline has just arrived at the end of its walk, and it's the conclusion of a spectacular multi-year process.
This resulted in Pitbull completing its 19.8 kilometer walk 5 weeks ahead of schedule. These gains will translate into an additional 3 months worth of operational time in the navigation pit. So, let's applaud Kwezela, who did it the Anglo-American way.
"53 hours to cross a railway line. One small step for man and one bloody long walk for a dragline." An astonishing piece of engineering. I mean, the dragline itself, we did have a comment from Mick Norton, who says the UK's only remaining walking dragline is still in one piece up in Wakefield. Might have to pop by and have a look at that at some point. But imagine that. I mean, that is not a fast-moving piece of kit. As Dan Cullen just said, 19 kilometres. Imagine doing that in the UK. And therein lies the difference. I mean, obviously there was lots to talk about Anglo-American. There was lots to talk about the local communities. Can you imagine anybody in the UK, say saying we're going to take down 4 different power lines, we're going to close roads, major roads, toll roads, and we're going to close a railway to get a machine from one side to the other. Would never, ever fly. An astonishing achievement. Hats off to the team at Anglo American. So let's get on with one of these, shall we?
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
There is somebody in our midst who is not a fan of Anglo American by the looks of it. Morning, Ken. Morning. Glenn Johnson says that's some beast of a machine. It really is. And when you think, I mean, it's a big dragline, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not one of the biggest. It's a monster, but it's not the biggest monster. Now, if you've been watching this show for any length of time whatsoever, you'll know that Volvo Construction Equipment is now actively involved in the all-electric World Rallycross Championships. In fact, I've been lucky enough to see the Volvo team in action twice now, both times in Germany. The latest leg of the championships took it to a whole new destination, South Africa. And once again, Volvo has played an integral part. Here's my mate Arvid to tell you more.
We're in South Africa, Cape Town, turn 4.
It has been probably the wettest winter in 30 years in Cape Town. I'm very much responsible for overseeing the maintenance of the circuit and coordinating all of that.
A big thunderstorm just passed through and it managed to completely flood the whole corner.
The concrete barriers are 1100 millimeters high and the water was only top 200 millimeters of the barriers was showing. So we started trying to get the place dry, moving earth, doing an enormous amount of work.
We have been supporting with digging in new drainage, we put in new wells, and now we've been able to get all the water out of the turn.
We've had some fantastic assistance from Volvo, a great deal of construction equipment. It was just not going to hold up for the event if we didn't do it. The operator who moves the blocks around says he doesn't want to use anything else, and he says it is far, far easier than any telehandler he's used in the past.
So now we're doing the final preparations to be ready to race.
And if you pop over to the Volvo Construction Equipment YouTube channel, you'll see they were very ready for the race. I've had a great time during both my visits to the RX World Championships, particularly when I got to drive an electric Volvo wheel loader on the Nürburgring. Not everybody can say they've done that. I know one other person that can say that. My mate Peter Haddock has done it, but it was good fun. But I bet that event in South Africa was absolutely awesome.
If you would like to buy a limited edition Break Fast show sticker, head on over to buymeacoffee.com/demolition news/extras.
There is no gripe of the day today, and there may never be again. I'm going to leave other people to do the griping. They seem to be pretty good at it. So instead, I'm going to play us out today with a bonus clip from those fine folks at Italian attachment maker Italmec. This film features one of their tools at work on a bridge demolition all the way over in Vancouver.
So this is a huge milestone in the project. We're taking down the North Granville loops. The machine being used is a mobile rotating pulverizer, and it has these powerful jaws that can actually chew through the concrete and the steel. We end up with a bunch of rubble, and that's transported off-site for recycling.
Another thing that people are going to start to see is work on the bridge deck. The center median will be removed, and then traffic will start to be reallocated as we start to rebuild the new connection across the bridge.
And that will pretty much wrap up the main part of this morning's show, although I have a funny feeling that the chat afterwards could go on for a while. To get ahead of that, I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping for the final time this week. Gazelle like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues, and have a good day, have a good weekend. Thoughts are with Andy Dalvell and his family. If you didn't see, his father-in-law passed away in the early hours of the morning. So thoughts are with you, Andy. As I say, if you want to have a chat, please pick up the phone. You know where I am. But if you do have the time and the inclination, please stick around, because the Craic will begin immediately after this final word from our key show sponsor. Turn that down a touch. Morning all, how are we doing? I'm going to go right the way. Dan Cullen says, did that Chihuahua? Not saying anything since about you. I don't know what a Chihuahua is, but no, not as far as I know. Dan, check your typing. I'm not sure that's actually a word. Right back to the beginning of the chat, and there we are. First off the mark this morning was Glenn Johnston. Morning, Glenn. How are you doing, my friend? I do owe Chris Ford an apology. I still haven't managed to get his backpack, his Kinshofer backpack in the post. It was bedlam here yesterday, but I promise I'm going to take a stroll down to the post office in about half an hour's time or thereabouts, and I'll get that sorted for you. Gary Muirhead says, good morning, Mark, and he's mirroring what we're all thinking, I think. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, gang. It's Friday. Yes, it is Friday. No show on Saturday this week. Thank the Lord. It's been a long week. It really has. Somewhat lengthened last night. That's a whole other story. There is a sad news, I'm afraid, from Andy Dalvell. If you were here earlier in the week, you will know that Andy had mentioned the fact that his father-in-law was very, very seriously ill, and he lost his fight against Bat. By the sound of it, though, he did put up a very brave fight. And I'll take that off. But my dad had been diagnosed with cancer, and it didn't progress for probably 3 years, and then it started to progress, and the whole thing. And it's not. Whenever you hear that expression, fought a battle with cancer, in my head, I'm it's their body or them trying to get their body to fight it off. It's not. Well, certainly wasn't in my dad's case. In my dad's case, he was in pretty much constant pain. His cancer was in basically the bladder and thereabouts, so he was constantly peeing blood. And trying to retain any form of dignity through that was his fight. It was, trying to soldier on and sort of look after his wife, my mum, who ultimately beat him to the finish line, as I put it in an article the other day. That's the fight. And to see it, it's, as I say, they're not fighting the cancer, they're fighting what cancer does to them. And if your father-in-law was anything like my dad, hats off to him, because it looks bloody horrible. Andy, thoughts are with you, mate. Lots of people saying the same. Let's hope. Good morning, Mark. Let's hope your media platform will accept any comment I make today. LinkedIn not aligned. I don't know. Have I got any LinkedIn? Not seeing any LinkedIn messages at the moment. It just blows hot and cold. It's a law unto itself. Although, funnily enough, the biggest problem I had was yesterday with Facebook. It wouldn't allow me to schedule the stream. Ultimately, it started to play ball, but it just sometimes does not do what it's supposed to. Jim Turner's with us. Morning, Jim. Hope you're fit and well, my friend. Sorry to hear the sad news regarding your father-in-law. Rest in peace. Now, imagine if you will. Not that I'm trying to make mileage out of Andy and his family's loss. I used to do obituaries back when I ran a magazine, or when I was an editor of a magazine, or assistant editor, deputy editor, owner of magazines. But those obituaries would come out sometimes 4 or 6 weeks afterwards. Andy's loss was just a few hours ago, and already the community has put their arm around his shoulders, metaphorically. You know what I'm saying. That's the benefit, or that's one of the many benefits of this show. Mark Whiting's with us as well. Good morning, Mark. Hope you're fit and well. Ken Hatcher's here as well. He's got sunshine. You must have my part, because he's chucking it down here. Absolutely chucking it down. Mick Norton, Mark Coleman is on another planet, and I find his remarks distasteful. Water off a duck's back, I say. Listen, he is not the. I was joking about cancel culture. I mean, I don't buy into that nonsense anyway. He's not the first. There have been people in greater positions of influence than him that have tried it over the years. And I'm still here. Just seems, I always think that, there are people that I find objectionable on the TV. Piers Morgan, Simon Cowell, Katie Hopkins. So, change the channel. Turn the telly off. There are certain musical artists, and this probably says more about me than it does about them. I have a real deep hatred is the wrong word, but a dislike of both Diana Ross and Phil Collins. Don't like them, don't like their music, don't like anything they've ever been associated with. And when they come on the radio, it's not enough for me to change the channel. I have to turn the radio off. But it is an option. Off switch. It's not hard. Chris Ford says, good morning, Trips. It's Friday. A good start for Saturday. Yeah, let's hope we all have a good weekend, shall we? There is our friend Mick saying, good morning, one and all. My question of the day. Gary Muirhead's question of the day, should I say. What would be your chosen superpower? Now, there's something lurking in the back of my brain. You guys are here a lot. And I think you pay closer attention than I do sometimes. There's something nagging away in the back of my head that says we may have had this question before. I may have written it down somewhere and never done it, but so we'll get to that in just a. There's Mick saying to Andy Dovell, regards to your loss. Yeah, quite right. Ken Hatcher saying X-ray eyes. Now, is that to check out the local lovelies down in Welsh Wales, or is that to be able to see sprocket alignment through things? I think we need to know. There's Andy Dovell saying, thanks guys. Andy, you're more than welcome, mate. Chris Ford, I'd love to be able to fly. Have you seen the price of fuel? But wouldn't fly. I used to when I was probably a teenager, I used to have a recurring dream, and it was very, very vivid, in which I could fly, and I had a method for flying. Leaning forward, sort of Michael Jackson Smooth Criminal style, into the wind, and suddenly I would raise, and then after that I had the ability, look at me, I had the ability to fly, and it was fantastic feeling in a dream. Love to be able to do that. And yeah, imagine that. Imagine ConExpo's coming up, rather than having to wait 3 hours at the airport and sit sit within a metal tube filled with other people's farts and eat crap food, just to be able to say, I'm off, and just that. I can't see it happening anytime soon, but you get the idea. Sorry to hear of your loss, says Chris Ford. Thank you very much indeed for that, Chris. Being Walking the Hound, missed what Mark Coleman said. Well, we all know what he said. Listen, as I say, there were many weird things about it, but he reposted what he'd said on LinkedIn, saying that I'd taken down his comment. Now, I run my own page, and I run the Demolition News page, and the article that I'd written was on both of those. But he'd seen it on a group called Linking Construction. I have no editorial control over that. I literally, it belongs to somebody else. I can't control that. And he swore blind that I'd taken his comment down. Why would I? I don't care. Seriously, there's a point that comes up a bit later in the chat from Jim, and it doesn't matter. Bearing in mind my relationship, in inverted commas, my relationship with the NFDC and the IDE, they keep me at arm's length. They don't have anything to do with me. They regularly try and do me down in one way or another. Makes no odds. Doesn't matter a stuff. Does not matter a stuff. Does not impact me at all. In fact, I find it quite amusing. This is just another example. So no need for me to take his comment down, and I'm going to leave it up there so that people can make their own mind up. But it was quite amusing to check the database on Demolition News today to see that there'd actually been an uptick in subscribers. Yeah. Let's have a look. Sorry for your loss, Andrew, says Glenn Johnson. Thank you very much indeed. Maybe you should be wearing your T-shirt, Mark. Mark Anthony is high risk. It's a bit chilly in here this morning. Otherwise, that would have been my first choice. But even that is a weird thing. The article that he had the problem with, apparently, it wasn't the fact that I was reporting the fact that they'd gone into a company voluntary arrangement, was the fact that I'd basically gone back and charted their history. So back to Harry Squibb in 1946, fresh out of the army, started the company down in Stepney, grew and grew and grew, changed the name to Squibb and Davis when he took on a partner, grew and grew, the various machinations. His son, the original Les Squibb, Les Senior, came on board, and he would be chairman up until he died in 2020, I think it was. And his son, another Les Junior, came. That was it. It was literally charting the history, and apparently that's upset him a bit. Question of the day: getting rid of the aches and pains of old age. Yeah, funny enough, somebody else echoes that a little bit later on. I think very well indeed, actually. And I wish I could see the other one, because it would be nice to flash it up on the screen, because it does. I think it was from Mostly Diggers. Or where is Garvin? He's here somewhere. Superpower. There you are. The ability to stand up and sit down without going, oh. Now, I do that. I am 58 years old. I do that. But I wonder if I need to. I sometimes feel like I've started to do it and now I just do it. I don't know if I actually need to. Hang on. No, I can get up and sit down without actually going ooh and ah. It's a voluntary thing, I think. Having said that, I've not been sat here for very long. Maybe if I sat here for a bit longer. But yeah, who knew? Let's have a look. Who else have we got here? There's Andy Darvell saying, definitely time travel. Go back to the people you've lost. Go to any point in time. Yeah, wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be lovely? And funny enough, although I've lost both my parents in the past year, 18 months, if I could go back and see one person, it'd probably be my grandfather. His name was Fred. My son is Fred, named after him. And yeah, we had a very, very close relationship, and I think he would have enjoyed some of the stuff that we did after he passed. Never got to see me married, didn't get to see me my children, certainly didn't get to see grandchildren either, or his great-grandchildren. His great-great-grandchildren, should that be. Another half an hour with him would be very, very welcome indeed. Gary Muirhead, question of the day: the power to see into the future and also to travel back in time. Odd. See, people have mentioned travelling through time, and both of them are going backwards. No intention to go forward? Not pop forward to next Friday and check out the Euro Millions numbers? No? Just me. The secret relationship between Gary Muirhead and my wife continues. Good morning, Ruth Ant. There's Ken Hatcher saying, sorry to hear your loss. Mick Saunders, very surprised at the comment from him, but we all have a choice to either watch and listen or just turn off. Yeah. Do you know, one of the things that I find strangest, bearing in mind we've got a YouTube channel that is currently sat at, I don't know, 98,000 subscribers or whatever it might be. And we get comments on a daily, sometimes an hourly basis, depending whatever it is that we're putting up. With one or two, and I do mean one or two notable exceptions over a period of about 15 years, I don't think I've ever commented on a video. What am I, even if I said this is the best video of all time, or the worst video of all time, what difference does it make? Don't understand at all. Question of the day: I'd make everyone happy. That would be my wife's superpower. Without getting slushy, she kind of does that. She drives me mental, obviously, because we're married. But she is one of those people that can actually light up a room. God, I'm going to regret that now, aren't I? She's a pain in the arse. Let's leave it at that. Good morning, Mr. Cullen. Late on parade, says Mick Saunders. And there's Dan Cullen admitting to the crime. Yeah, absolutely. But better late than never, I always say. Mick Norton, going back to the cat rental store, says the cat dealership would never have the same versatility if he relied on electric variants. Again, what a big switch that could potentially be. I mean, we've been talking about individual contractors or individual companies making the electric switch. Imagine that from a plant hire point of view. How many chargers does it take to ensure that your fleet, however many machines it is, and imagine that from, I don't know, like a Flannery or a Lynch or a Sunbelt point of view. Imagine if you had a lot of electric equipment, how much charging that would require to be work ready at a moment's notice. Good point, well made, Mick. Now, this is the point I mentioned earlier. Jim Turner says the problem with business is they want bought people in their pocket. Bought award ceremonies, bought politicians, bought councils, bought planners. It's as old as civilization. They hate the independent that can't be bought. Keep up the good work, Mark. Well, I fully intend to, Jim, but I realise you're taking a wider stance on this, but that I do believe is at the very heart of this. The NFDC for years had the only UK demolition magazine. They only wrote positively about their own people. So I think there is a generation of demolition people that grew accustomed to that. They're not used to, when I formed the Demolition magazine, me writing about members and non-members. That freaked them out slightly, but also delivering the rough with the smooth. They didn't like that, and so on down the line. And now we have a situation, obviously I folded the Demolition magazine and concentrated on this. There is another Demolition magazine out there who profess that they only report the positive. So as a result, yesterday's debacle with Squibb Group, by a long, long way, the most significant piece of news in the UK demolition industry since the CMA fines were handed down in March. And they've not covered it. How is that serving their readership? The absolute truth of it is the reason they haven't covered it is because there's not a press release to accompany it. That's all they do. Whereas yours truly has spent 35 years doing this, does the research, does the writing, does the homework. There's lots of people saying good morning as well. Going on to that dragline, that is an awesome weapon. Yeah, absolutely. There is Mick Norton's comment about the only working dragline up in Wakefield. And next time I'm up north, I may actually have to do a bit of a detour on that one. I wonder how much it cost. I'm assuming you mean how much did the move cost? I would imagine an absolute fortune. I mean, I ultimately guess if you're opening a new mine that's going to be running for at least the next decade or something like that, maybe it's worth it. Well, obviously somebody's done the math. They've got the calculator out and done the math. But that did look like one hell of an investment. Taking down power lines, closing railways, closing motorways, toll roads as well. Yeah, absolutely. Dan Cullen says that's how you get a job done. Imagine the planning that goes into that as well. And the other thing that struck me about that was they got under the first power line 5 hours early. I guess they could have parked it up. But imagine getting to that toll road and you've got an overnight possession of a road or a weekend possession because it was 53 hours. No, that was the railway. 53 hours to get across the railway. But imagine if you've booked that and you arrive 10 hours early. So you're all standing around twiddling your thumbs. Or, worse still, imagine, rather than 53 hours, it took 56, 60, 70. Then you've got a problem. That's one beast of the machine. Wow, 19 kilometres. Imagine doing that in the UK. I know we tend to look at the one I see it most often with is where we see these mammoth construction projects from China, where they build a 10-storey building in a weekend. Oh, that would never happen in the UK. In the UK, you're allowing months, if not years, just for the planning permission. And like I say, imagine that. And imagine all of the bureaucracy that would go into moving that machine here. You'd have to deal with the railway company, possibly 2 or 3 different power companies for the overhead lines. You'd have to deal with national highways as well. Just so many hoops to jump through. And at the end of it, they've gained employment and they have secured those jobs for the foreseeable future. worth doing it, I think, even though Ken Hatcher is not a fan. I have a funny feeling this dates back to Ken's... What was it that he was... Oh, excuse me. There was something about the biggest underground mine in the UK or something like that. And I know Ken had a bit of an investment in that. I think that may be related. Let's have a look. Given 53 hours to cross the railway line. Typical bank holiday or strike day over here. No pressure. Yeah, maybe that would be the way. Maybe that would be to make sure you got the time allotted. Just go along to a railway and abuse some of their staff. And when they all come out on strike, right, move the dragline. Let's have a look. Okay. It's a spelling thing, okay? So, did that Chihuahua, it's a dog, say anything about you? About you since? No, not as far as I know. And there he clarifies. Meant that small dog, big attitude. Chihuahua. I'm on the same page as you now, mate. Thank you very much indeed for clarifying that. Dan Cullen's got his machine service at last. Jim Turner, sorry for your loss, Andy. Chris Ford, you must be a proper journalist if you've upset someone. I like your style, the power of free speech. Everyone had their own opinion. Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, there is a term that I find deeply, deeply offensive in the business now. I've been a journalist for 35 years. 35 and a bit years, and it was something that I worked towards. I did my qualifications and I did my study and all the things, and it's a badge of honour to say you're a journalist. I'm an actual writer. Now in this industry, obviously we've got people that refer to themselves as influencers, whatever. But the one that I find the most offensive of the lot is media partners. Where you have a magazine that basically agrees to write nice things about companies or organisations in return, generally for cash. Where is the credibility of that? And I realise he's not everybody's cup of tea as a journalist, but imagine that applied to Jeremy Clarkson. Go back to the old style Top Gear, and you turn on to Top Gear, and there is Jeremy Clarkson taking the latest Toyota for a spin as their media partner. And he gets in it, and typical Jeremy Clarkson style, he says this is the best car in the world. And he then goes through all of the features and the benefits and how comfortable it is and how fast it accelerates and how safe it is. In an instant, Jeremy Clarkson will have destroyed his credibility, because if you know he's being paid to do that, immediately he is less. And as I say, there are people, individuals in this industry now that operate primarily as influencers. And you literally see them on YouTube or on Instagram. I'm with Kubota today, and the Kubota mini excavator is the best mini excavator that money can buy. And listen, Kubota make a bloody good mini excavator, no question about it. And then 2 days later, the very same person is now somewhere else. I'm stood with this Takuchi mini excavator. As you know, Takuchi make the best mini excavators in the world. Your opinion is worthless when you do that. That's why I've taken a step back. I don't attend events for the IDE or the NFDC. I've got no ties, no allegiances whatsoever. I'm just stood back here doing my own thing. Andy Darvell, bloody hell, that's been a long fight. He got blood cancer for 13 years, nearly died then. He was ready as rights, came back from the brink, had a fabulous 13 years working on cars. His cancer then turned to full-on leukemia in May, which there was no way back from. We spent last night with him. Horrible to see how cancer ravages people. Yeah, that it's one of the hardest things funnily enough, it wasn't when my dad died. He was rushed into hospital. I'm probably going back, I don't know, 8-9 years or something like that. And I got the phone call to say that he'd been rushed into hospital. So dropped everything, jumped in the car, went to the hospital. And I walked, there was a curtain pulled around his bed. And I pulled the curtain back. And rather than my dad sat in the bed, there was a little frail old man. And that wasn't even the cancer. He had an issue with his aorta. But it was like 30 years had passed. And I'd only seen him, a week before. But 13 years. And that, oddly enough, that business of bouncing back, one of my best mates in the industry, a guy called Larry Davis, who is no longer with us, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And he was Jewish. Not a particularly devout Jew, but he was Jewish. And he basically phoned me up and said, there is it a yarmulke? The skull cap thing. There's one of those in the post on its way to you, because in the Jewish faith, the funeral tends to take place very quickly, 24, 48 hours. And he'd been told by the doctors he literally had hours left to live. So I received this thing, and I was on standby waiting for the phone call. A couple of days went by, and he phoned me up and he said, I'm back home again. I'm past the worst. And he stuck around for about another 4 or 5 years after that. And at that point, when he finally died, I was nowhere around, so I didn't get to say goodbye. It's a cruel thing. I'm not going to share it with you now, Andy, but I did mention earlier this week, I've got a little bit of a sideline. It's an unpaid sideline. It's just getting crap out of my head. But I've been writing quite a bit about grief and loss over the past a couple of weeks or thereabouts. When you're out of the woods, and if you'd like to have a look at that, just drop me a line and I'll point you in that direction. But as I say, now is not the time. Gary Muirhead, morning Gary, says my other half. Good Lord. You get a room, you two. Question today, Mick Norton. Like the lobster, the ability to revert to an earlier life stage. Can a lobster do that? Can it? I didn't know that. What a fact. Well, by the time I get to meet a lobster, frankly, there is no earlier life stage, because it's usually on a plate covered in mayonnaise. But I did not know that. I'm going to look that up after this. Imagine trying to get it done earlier, ahead of budget in the UK. Never seen it. Yeah, absolutely. I thought they walked the dragline a fair distance down Colby in the 80s. Did they? If anybody remembers that, I'd love to hear about that. Question today, time travel. A lot can be sorted if we have a few chances to get it right. I could put a good few bets on to keep me in clover. I don't want to drag this out for the rest of the morning, but if you could pop back in time. I've already mentioned that I'd quite like another chat with my grandfather, but looking at the grander scheme of things, if you could pop back in time just once for 10 minutes, anywhere, anytime, where would you go? And would you put something right? Would you, for example, pop back to 1938 Germany and put a bullet between Hitler's eyes? Would you do that? Would you get on board the Titanic and say to the captain, you best slow down, pal. There's a big lump of ice ahead. Would you do that? I'd love to hear from you. Question, why do these people put so many numbers and letters in their profile? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'd be different if I actually had some numbers and letters after my name. But I do remember when I was working on Contract Journal, I was working with some really, really smart people. Lots and lots of former civil engineers. Oddly enough, in both the editorial and the advertising side of things, and they had lots and lots of letters after their name, but their business cards never ever featured it. And then we had a guy turn up for a job. He was basically, he reported to me. Not that that matters at all, but he insisted on having his. I can't even remember what letters he wanted after his name, but he insisted on having it. And bearing in mind you're working in construction, and you're basically talking to somebody who's dragged himself up by the bootstraps, possibly didn't finish school, maybe questionable levels of literacy, and you're handing him a business card. Aren't I clever? Didn't last long. Gary Muirhead. Have to go. Have a fantastic weekend, guys. You too, my friend Gary. Enjoy your weekend. I'd like that on a t-shirt. Garvin says, integrity is everything. Yeah, it is. I mean, I think it is just generally in life. The people that I look up to and admire the most are the ones. Extreme example, I guess, would be somebody like Muhammad Ali, who basically had so little respect for the powers that be. He threw away his Olympic gold medal, refused the draft to go to Vietnam, lost his world heavyweight title as a result of it, just stood by his principles. That's the sort of person I look up to, and I'm not comparing myself to him. All I do is write about bloody diggers, for crying out loud. But yeah, the people, even within the industry, there are certain people that I particularly look up to. People like John Woodward, Mike Keogh, Adrian McLean, Richard Dolman, people like that have just said, we're doing our thing. You know, all of you out there, you can do your thing, but we're over here doing our thing. Integrity, loyalty, and trust. Biggest traits in my mind. I would say one thing. Ross is a great guy. Has any issues, he's on it. As you mentioned, problems. Not like some companies I've worked with previously. Let it go till it was a bigger issue. I'm assuming Ross is Ross Redhead, and yes, he is. Lovely guy. Give him my regards. I'd go and see my mate Alice and tell her not to do herself in and help her get through her problems. Wow. You've seen that up close as well, have you, Jim? It's a bastard, isn't it? It really is. For the sake of one more conversation, for the sake of one little bit of reassurance, that person might still be around. And yeah, listen, I've told the story more times than is probably reasonable. Been there. And funnily enough, I was writing about not about suicide, but vaguely about loss yesterday. And one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with, and it has started with my parents, the loss of my parents. You know, there's things that I remember as a kid that I'd love to be able to phone my mum up and say, did I remember that right? What was her name? Where did we go? What was that all about? I've lost that. But the one that I find hardest is my best mate killed in a motorcycle accident a good few years ago now. And we were, from the age of about 15, we were inseparable. You know, we went to school together, we worked together, we lived together. You know, I mean, apart from the house that you're looking at now, he's lived in every house I've ever owned. But the biggest, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that he's not going to walk through the door anytime soon. I've got my head around that. Where I struggle is there are things that he and I did that only he and I would remember. And when we were together, you know, you'd start telling a story about something that happened, you know, 10, 15, 30 years ago. And he'd fill in the gaps and I'd add a bit. And it was almost like a duet. You know, he brought a bit and then I brought a bit and it was a duet. And now, as I've said in the article that I've written, all of my stories are a monologue and they're less for it. Because a lot of our stories revolved around us being drunk and stupid and young and naive. And when there were two of us telling those stories, they were so much funnier, louder, more entertaining. And now it just sounds like a miserable old git talking about his youth. I tell you what, I'm going to tell you, even though it will be less, I'm going to tell you one last story before I go for the weekend, because it is, I'm going to go over to this one, rather. If I could go back in time, I'd save the 9 mates I lost while serving the army, but I know they are always marching by my side. Well said, Mick. Love that. So me and my best mate, who, as I say, sadly no longer with us, 17 years old, we went to Spain together for the first time. Now, my mate Bruce had been overseas a couple of times with his parents, who used to holiday in the south of France. I had never set foot outside the UK, so this was a huge adventure, particularly for a 17-year-old. We were staying in a place in Spain called Calella, and we were staying at a hotel called the Hotel Olympic. This was at a time when Spain was still being built up. You know, there was still room to put new hotels in Benidorm and Torremolinos and stuff. And Calella was the next big development. So the Hotel Olympic was really, really big, very, very wide, quite tall, probably about 10 stories tall, but quite wide. But it was basically on a patch of land that was completely open. I would imagine if I went back there now, the patch of land has probably got another 15 hotels on it. But at the time, there was just this hill, and there was the Hotel Olympic at the top of the hill. So we've been on the beach all day, and we're trudging back. Do you remember we used to have those straw mats that you sunbathed on back in the day? Yeah, we had that. Had the long hair because this was the 80s and all the things, right? So we're walking back, and we saw a lady at a distance. We were a good 200-300 yards away, and unspoken, but we saw a middle-aged lady walking down the steps from the Hotel Olympic, about to cross the road. She had her handbag over her shoulder. She's got to the path, and over to our right, there was a motor scooter. Two local guys sat on it, and they saw her come down the stairs and start to walk along, and they started to ease up behind her. Sure enough, they got to within about 10 feet, I suppose, opened up the throttle, and as they drove past, one of them grabbed the handbag. The handbag strap didn't snap, so as a result, she sort of span around and she ended up in a bit of a heap on the ground, and off they went. Well, the force of that actually dragged the guy off the back of the scooter. He was still running, but he didn't hit the ground, but he had fallen off the scooter. So he's running after his mate with the scooter. Off to our far left enters the most British tourist you've ever seen in your life. Skinhead, bright red skin, Union Jack shorts, a proper sight. He looks at the old lady or the middle-aged lady in the road. He looks at the motor scooter coming towards him, and he looks at the guy running after his mate on the motor scooter. And without a moment's hesitation, bang, left hook, absolutely levels the guy that had fallen off the motorbike. Bends over, picks up the handbag, throws it over his shoulder, very nonchalant, walks towards the lady, helps dust her down, hands her the handbag, and carries on walking. And as far as we could tell, he didn't say a word. He was like the Lone Ranger. Just came to a rescue, handed the bag back, and just walked off into the distance. I like that story. It was way, way better when we told it together. And that is, and again, going back to the point there from Mick, go back in time, save the 9 mates I lost while serving in the army. Again, Mick, I'm sure you've got your memories. I'm sure they would all have their memories. How much better would those memories be if you were all 10 of you sat in a pub with everybody filling in their own parts? And I think that's one of the things that you lost. And certainly one of the things I feel like I've lost. Dan Cullen says, have a wonderful weekend, guys, and stay safe, and we'll see you on the other side on Monday. All doing great. Look forward to it, Dan. Have a great weekend, my friend. Mick Sutton says, gents, it's always been a pleasure. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Yeah. He was in the army. Do what Mick says. Stay safe. Please do that. I'll see you again on Monday. And Andy, thoughts with you, mate. Never met her, but give my very, very best to your good lady, because I'm sure she's not doing particularly well at the moment. And there is Andy Dovell saying, thank you for today, guys. You're more than welcome, Andy. Go spend some time with your other half. Stay safe. Yeah, I intend to. Everybody, it's been a pleasure. Go enjoy. I'll speak to you soon.